What we got?
Josh made a trade yesterday, trading Jonathan Hankins. Is that a sign that some of the younger guys are coming along?
I don't think it's. I mean, I don't think that's just a sign of anything. I think Dave and that group upstairs does a great job of trying to evaluate every opportunity that comes their way. They've tried to do that all year. We've tried to do it as a group, just making decisions that we think might be able to help us either now or as we go forward. We're trying to take focus on the Saints, but at the same time there's a long-term view here that you have to keep in mind, and really enjoy John. Did a great job for us, and it's just an opportunity that presented itself, and you try to evaluate each one of them individually and see if that's what you think is best for the team. And we do have some young players. Hopefully they can step in there and play some good football.
Along those lines, the trade deadline is coming up in a week. Any thoughts on that at all, or what's
For me? No. I mean, honestly, it's been all New Orleans. Really trying to get familiar with a team that I'd say our team doesn't know very well. They're in a different obviously conference, and so it's just this is a completely, I'd say, different style of football that we're getting ready to play than what we played last week or even the few weeks before that. So I've been totally, invested in that. Dave and Champ and those guys do a great job of this is always a busy time for them. There's a lot of conversations that are had and those kind of things. But if something comes across my desk, then I'll take some potential interest in it.
Coach, you were talking about getting ready to play a different style of football in New Orleans. What would you describe that style so far, just watching the tape?
Very physical. This is as tough and physical as a group, I'd say, on the whole, as you're gonna see. And I'm talking about every phase of the game of football. Dennis, it's the first year head coach, but he's been there for a long time, and so his philosophy and his the way he wants to play defense is obviously very well ingrained in their players. Pete Carmichael has been there with Sean for a long time. Really, there's a lot of continuity in this organization when you talk about Sean Payton being there from 06 to 21, and now there's a lot of people that are still there. The general manager, the way they built the team, there's a lot of continuity. So they know exactly who they are. They know what their identity is. They play to it. They've been in. They played 7 games, and all but one of them was a one-score game, to finish, whether they won or lost. So very similar to us. They've been in a lot of close games. It's a tough physical group. They're explosive, I'd say, in all 3 phases. Offensively, they can score in one play. With a lot of different skill players. They're very fast. Defensively, the guys on the edge, Davenport, Jordan, they can get to the quarterback quickly. Nobody's touched the ball more than Tyrann Mathieu since he's been in the league. So, and we know they had a lot of guys that have been injured. But we're preparing for everybody on their roster right now. They've had a little extra time to hopefully heal up on their end, and we'll see who ends up playing, but we're preparing for all their guys. But it's a very explosive group, very tough, very physical in all 3 phases, play very hard in a kicking game. And playing down there on the road in this stadium is always a big challenge. It's going to be noisy. That's always an added burden when you go in there and play them. So, a lot of things to prepare for, a lot of new players to get used to and learn. That's basically what we're hard at work at doing today.
Josh, how has Josh Jacobs' production the past 3 weeks kind of changed your philosophy, the way that you've looked at using running backs in the past? You never really had that one guy that's been the specific running back one, and now, all the carries, the touches, everything else.
Yeah.
Production seems to.
Yeah, I don't think the philosophy in terms of what we're doing has changed at all. I think that you're right. We definitely, in my history, we've used different backs, I would say, differently, and maybe had more of a rotation. When we had Corey Dillon back in the early 2000s, that was a little different. We featured him a lot and gave him the ball a bunch. Sony, when he was a rookie, had 1,000 yards and, was pretty productive. But by and large, I think that was something that we chose to do, made a conscious decision to do it because we felt like that's what was probably best for the team. In this case, I think he's, the one thing that hasn't happened is he hasn't had 25 carries a game for the whole season. The first few games of the season, we really fell out of balance a little bit. So the wear and tear on him was, pretty minimal, honestly, because we were behind and we threw the ball a lot and all the rest of it. So we'll keep our eyes on that as we go through the year. But I think the players really earn, what they get. And in his case, he does it in practice. He does it in the games. He's been very consistent and dependable, obviously very tough and productive. And so, no reason to do it, then we won't do it. If there is a reason to do it based on wear and tear and those kind of things, and obviously our other guys are ready to go. So, I don't think it's really a change in anything. I think it's just we're kind of seeing how it's going and kind of following that, until it really needs to change, honestly.
Josh, there's a lot of websites out there that grade players or units and, they have their own little power ratings and we as media quote them from a coaching staff standpoint. And the Raiders have players at the top of some ratings and at the bottom and units same. As a coach, do you have your own analytics? Are you an analytics guy? Is it more of an eye test and you know what they're doing that stats don't tell? Where are you when it comes to that sort of the schematics?
I think the way we would do it, we grade obviously every practice and every game film. And the one thing that sometimes I think gets lost in translation on some of those things, and I don't know which ones you're referring to, but I understand there's a lot of people that do that, and they probably do it very well. The one thing that gets lost sometimes is what the intent of the play or the design of the scheme was. And sometimes, somebody gets credited with, let's just say a corner gets credited with giving up a reception, but it really was zone coverage and that was his job, was not to really cover that as tightly as maybe somebody else wanted him to cover. So now the target win rate is less than what it should be, and so sometimes I think that can get difficult for people that wouldn't know what the design was to judge. But we grade it all, and every player has a grade every game. They know where they stand relative to assignment, whether the finish of the play, the effort, the technique that they used. We grade all those different factors in the game, and then we coach them on Monday and try to improve as much as we can, as best we can throughout the season. So we use our own more than anything else. There is some data. I know that we have access to certain things here. There is some data that I think at times is helpful when you're in a pinch and you're trying to hurry up and gather some information quickly. We use some of that stuff, I know, in free agency and certain things like that. But during the season, I think it's mostly trusting what you see in your own grades based on practice and the game.
Both a coaching and player performance standpoint, what are some areas that you think the defense could be better and improve moving forward?
I think that, we've talked a lot about, the turnover margin in general. Clearly we've attempted to try to get the ball out, but there's a difference between actually getting it out and putting it on the ground and then recovering it and getting our hands on more footballs. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of people that have to do their job right to give you opportunities to get that done. Thought we made some progress in the red zone last week. Stiffened up a little bit in the defensive end when they got down there inside the 25-yard line, and that's always going to be an area that we discuss a lot because there's nothing more important than those two things: turnovers and the ball and points. So, really our focus is going to be on those two areas primarily. How can we limit explosive plays? How can we limit points in the red zone? And how can we take the football away? I would say much like most defenses are, and so a few areas where we're going to try to see if we can't make some progress.
Preparing for a team that has a lot of guys come back from injury. With the quarterback position, they don't really know who's going to be out there. Mm-hmm. How do you prepare for either or?
You got to do both. Honestly, it's three of them. So let's not forget about him. Number 7's a pretty good player, a really good football player. But we've got film on both. We've got film on both in this system and this offense with this play caller. So we're going to study hard on the things that they do, the things that they are attempting to do, with each guy. And really, regardless of who it is, it's still the same explosive offense. They've scored, they're close to the top of the league in scoring, big plays, rushing offense, broken tackle. I mean, you name it, and they're fairly high up there in terms of what they've done. So it's a big challenge to try to limit some of that production and minimize some of that, which, we're going to see if we can take a shot at it on Sunday.
Coach, Cam Jordan has 4.5 sacks in his last 5 games. Can you talk about what he brings to the table in terms of a challenge for you?
Yeah, this guy's he's a great football player, great leader. Almost never comes out of the game, which is unbelievable. We've played him a number of times, and every time you ask the same question, well, what percentage of the game is he playing? And it's 98%, 99%, and for a guy that's that physical, that tough, that aggressive, this guy is just, he's a warrior, and he's really physical, really good rusher, knows all the tricks, speed to power, can spin, understands who he's rushing against, really good run defender. He's just a very disruptive player, so his production over the course of his career, honestly, it's second to none in many cases, second to only a few in others. But in terms of being able to be productive over a long period of time, there's not many people that can claim the production that he has. So it'd be a great challenge for us. A tremendous player.
When you look at things in the trenches, what are some small, minute things from like Andrew Billings and so now Nichols that you really like in terms of stopping the run?
Yeah. Well, I think they playing with their hands is obviously an important part of run defense, and not getting moved sideways and playing vertically into the defense. It's going to be important this week. They've got some really physical linemen. They run a challenging scheme. They have a lot of different run schemes that they throw at you. But look, defensive line play is it's not a study in perfect, every play. You're going to have to do some dirty work in there. You're going to get doubled, knocked around a little bit. But I think those guys have really acclimated to trying to play with our hands, trying to play vertical, trying to knock the line of scrimmage backwards, and get in there on some of those things that, those dirty tackles that they have to be able to make. So really like the way that they're trying to play. We can get better, make progress. I know that. And those guys, both work very hard along with our whole entire defensive line group.
The other day we asked you about Jakob specifically and what role he has played, but just more in general, why is the fullback still important to you in your offense when a lot of teams maybe have kind of gone away from that a little bit?
To me, I feel like if you can be productive, as a football player, and we have ways that we can use him to help us be productive, then it's worth considering. Whether that's playing with 3 or 4 receivers at a time, 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, a fullback, jumbo tackle, whatever it is. Whatever we think is the best way to try to, move the football and try to score points is what we've always tried to do. I feel like, the more, the game kind of evolves, sometimes some of the core basic things that people did a long time ago have a chance to become even more productive because there's not many teams working on it, and so, some teams don't have a fullback on their roster. Some teams don't practice against it ever. Some teams haven't seen it in 2 months, and so it's kind of like when you play a very specific defense that, blitzes 80% of the time and you're going, holy cow, rest of the season we've seen 15% blitz, and so it kind of, you only have a 3-day work week most weeks in the National Football League, and if we can continue to make productive plays with him out there, then I think we'll continue to use it.
Any update on Darren Waller?
I think you'll see him out there today.
Josh, random and kind of outside the box, but Tom Brady is within 500 passing yards, including the playoffs, of 100,000 passing yards in his career. You were there for a lot of them. What is that number? I saw your reaction. What does that number mean to you? But then the second part of that, and I got to look at my notes for this one, the flea flicker, Moss, Brady to Gaffney, 56-yard touchdown. That's still the longest air pass that he's thrown since they started tracking.
Really?
What do you remember about that play?
Yeah. Wow, that's a. The number I think speaks to, obviously longevity is what comes to mind, but why is he still playing at that level? I think that comes down to, how hard he works, how hard he's always worked. In order to be able to be that good for that long, there's things you have to sacrifice in your own health, and he's been willing to do those things to stay out there, and takes great care of his body, cares a lot about the competition, wants to always do right by his teammates. I always think about how great of a teammate he is when I hear that number. That's the first thing that came to my mind was, how many times has he gone out there and not felt great, and put it out there and done a really good job of helping his team play and win for that many years. That's really what I think about. And that play you're referring to, I remember that was in 07. We threw it to the right to Randy, and then he threw it back to Tom to the left. And if I remember correctly, there's two things that stand out to me. Number one, he threw the ball, and I think it skipped to Moss, and Moss kind of like picked it up like a shortstop, like Derek Jeter would, and it almost didn't get off the ground, and we didn't get it. And then Randy ended up throwing it back to Tom, and I think there was a safety by the name of Anthony Smith, I think it was his name. He had predicted that they were gonna beat us. I think he guaranteed a victory that day, and he was the one that was reaching for the ball as Gaffney caught it. So I think there was a little extra sauce on that one because he really wanted to hit that one. So I remember that was a big play in the game. It was kind of a tight game at the time, and he put it out there a long way. I didn't know if he could get it all the way there because it was going to be a long throw. So
Since started tracking air yards, that's still Tom's
longest one. Doesn't shock me.
All right,
Good? Okay, you got it. Thanks, guys.